Hey, hello, how are you? And welcome to my channel. Today I wanted to do a recap of all of the books that I read in July. I know it's getting a little bit late, but I still couldn't help myself because I really need to talk about these books. This month was a much better reading month than June. I finished 5 books. Still not super impressive, but I am happy that at least it's like more than 3. That was just awful. I'm still embarrassed about that. And if you remember, I did say in June that I was going to finish Winterkill, which is the last book in the Dark Iceland series by Ragnar Jonasson, and I didn't. I got lazy and I honestly just didn't feel like sitting down and taking the time to read it on my Kindle. I also thought that I was farther in it than I actually am. I picked it up and I was like, you know what, I can totally finish this in like a night. No, I was like 53% through, and I definitely thought I was like 65 to 70% through, so that is a goal for August, is to finish that book, finish that series. I just need to get through it. I think that procrastinating and taking longer to do it is not helping me, and I'm going to forget what happened in the beginning of the book if I don't finish that up quickly. Anyway though, let's get to the books that I actually did finish this month. So the first book that I finished this month was This Is How It Always Is by Lori Frankel. I believe this one was on my June TBR and I read most of it, but I didn't finish it until like actually July 1st. So I guess I mostly read it in June, but I did finish it this past month, and I wanted to talk about it because honestly, this book was amazing. I don't really know what I was expecting. I didn't know much about it going into it. If you'll remember, I actually did say at one point that it was nonfiction. It's not. I just made that up. It is based off of a true story. It's based off of the author's life and her story with her daughter, but it is mostly fictitious. But it was absolutely amazing. This is a book that I will think about for a long time. I feel like even just being like a month past finishing it, I still remember so much of it so vividly because it was that good. I gave it 5 stars and I highly recommend anyone to read it. This is the story of Poppy. She is a little girl that was born a little boy, and it's the story of her parents kind of grappling with how to deal with this. What is this? What do we think of this? And it's also the story of how she navigates through the first couple years of her childhood. And it was just a really beautiful story. It brought up so many things that I had just never thought about before. And I really feel like there's so many people that could gain so much insight from reading even this fictional perspective, because it just feels like a really important book to me, and I would love it if more people read it. So that's the first book that I finished this month. After that, I read Sun, which is the 4th and final book in the Giver Quartet by Lois Lowry. I have been finishing this quartet over the last couple months. I did read the first book, The Giver, when I was in 7th grade, and I absolutely loved it. I found out a couple years ago that it is in fact a series, and so I wanted to go back and restart it and read all the rest of them. And now that I've finished the series, I can confidently say you should not read it. I'm not joking. It's not good. If you're going to listen to me at all, just read the first book. Just read the first book and pretend that it's a standalone. That's all you need. All the other stories are from different people's perspectives, so you never really get the closure that you want. Once you've finished the first book, you'll know what I'm talking about. I definitely wanted closure after I read that, and then I read 3 more books and I never got that. So I don't think you should. To be honest, I think it's a waste of time. And let me just tell you, the 4th one was probably the worst. I thought the 3rd one was super weird and also boring, but the 4th one was worse because I feel like it made me think that it was gonna be good because it starts out going back in time. And I was like, oh, is this gonna be a prequel? No, not the entire book, just like the first part. I think it's just like split up into 2 parts, if I remember, maybe 3 parts. And part 1 is essentially a prequel. It does take place during the timeline of the first book, The Giver. It's just from a different person in the community's perspective. And I was like, wow, okay, this is interesting. Maybe I'll get what I wanted. No, then it just gets super weird, and I can't even, I struggle to describe this book. I struggle to describe this whole series because I genuinely don't understand what Lois Lowry was thinking when she wrote this. I don't understand how nobody in the editing and publishing process was like, hey, this is a bad idea. Nobody's gonna want to read this. Because you know what? If I was a 12-year-old, which is like basically the target audience of this series, this would be even worse. It would be even more boring and weird because it's not what I wanted. I stuck it out because I'm an adult with OCD and I need to finish every series that I start. But I wouldn't recommend it. It gets so strange and honestly, like, fantasy. The series starts dystopian and then it finishes a fantasy, and that doesn't really make any sense. There are no rules. It's not necessarily magic, but it's not normal either. There's no like scientific way that a lot of these things could be explained, and I feel like there's just so much that's missing. I feel like there are puzzle pieces that are lost, and it's just not good. No thank you. So yeah, I ended up giving it just 1 star. Then I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. I have been wanting to read this book for a long time. I bought this book on my Kindle quite a while ago, and I had just been waiting for the right time. It just felt like the mood was not striking me, and so I just kept putting it off and putting it off, and then I finally felt like, okay, you know what, let's do it. Let's break into this series. I think I also kind of felt like I finished the Giver series, so it's okay for me to start a new series. Not that I only read one at a time, but it just gets really overwhelming when you're in the middle of so many series at the same time. So I finally took the leap and started this one, and I have thoughts. I knew that it was YA, and I historically am not a fan of YA romance. So I thought this one would be fine because it's like a YA mystery, but it's also got YA romance in it. There's like a YA love triangle with brothers, which I personally think is icky normally. And I didn't love that, so that did kind of color the way that I read this book. It was not my favorite, and it's making me think that maybe I just don't like any YA at all. I don't know. But yeah, I also have to say that, and this is totally on me, my expectations of this book were way off. So I actually didn't know what this book was about. I just knew that it was mystery. There is a big cast and it gives Knives Out vibes. I do agree with all of those assessments of this plot, but when I read the title, The Inheritance Games, it made me think that there was going to be a Hunger Games style competition for a large inheritance. I completely made that up. I don't know why, but that's just what the title made me think. No. The story is there's this random girl that gets a letter in the mail that says she needs to be at the reading of this will of this super duper rich dude that died. And she doesn't know who this guy is, but she goes and it turns out he has died and they're going to read the will to the entire family, but she has been willed something and so she needed to be there too. All of the family is like pretty salty at her since she made them wait to hear this important news because she didn't answer the letter right away. And then basically she is working with the guy's grandsons to try to figure out why she was in the will at all. It doesn't make sense because she does not know this guy, she is not related, she doesn't understand it, nobody else does either. And they're trying to figure it out through solving a series of puzzles that the great-grandpa left, essentially. They're small games. So it's an inheritance that somebody got, and there are games that they play to try to figure out why the inheritance was gotten. Does that make sense? I don't know. But yeah, that is very different than what I originally thought the book was gonna be about. Doesn't really matter anymore. I did end up giving it 3 stars. I know that a lot of people really like this series and they might think that that's a little bit low. I didn't hate it, I just wasn't like amazed by it. So I think that I'll read the second one and then see how I'm feeling. I do own the first, second, and fourth books on my Kindle. Not really sure why. I guess the third one just never went on sale. That's probably why I didn't buy it. But yeah, I'm probably gonna read the second one soon and see how I feel about it. See if maybe that one gets higher than 3 stars. But yeah, I finally read The Inheritance Games. Then I read Director's Cut by Carlin Greenwald. This is a queer romance, which I've been trying to read as many of those as I can. I do want to at some point do a whole video dedicated to queer romance recommendations. I think that would be really fun to do. So this is another entry for that video. I found this book because the illustrator of the front cover is Lenny Kaufman. I've talked about her lots of times before. I just love her artwork so much. I think that the people look so cute and adorable. I follow her on Instagram. She did the covers for the Maple Hills series by Hannah Grace. And so whenever she posts about a new cover that she's finished, I normally look up the book and see if it's one that I would want to read. And this one sounded really intriguing to me, and so I ended up reading it this month. This is a book about a queer actress slash director. She is kind of in a weird spot in her career. She's done a lot of acting, and then she came out as a lesbian, and then she directed her first feature film, and all the questions that any of the interviewers want to ask her about is just about being queer. And it's not that she wants to hide that, she's proud of it, but she also wants people to recognize her for her work. So she's really frustrated and she's not sure whether or not she wants to keep going with acting and or directing, but she does have her degree in some sort of film studies. I can't remember at the moment. But she decides that she's going to take a temporary teaching position at USC, and she ends up falling for her co-professor, and it's very cute. I really liked it. I feel like a lot of the queer romances that I've read just seem like they have this depth to them that I sometimes feel is lacking in like straight romances. That could just be a coincidence, but I feel like this one was so deep and I really related to the main character. She's got anxiety, she's got stomach issues, and so do I. So that was really interesting to read about a character that I feel like I really understood. Also, the class that she teaches is on movie musicals, and I am nothing if not a fan of movie musicals and just musicals in general. So I really enjoyed all the references in this book. It made me laugh because I held a lot of the same opinions about a lot of the films and stage adaptations and whatnot that they brought up. That was really awesome for me. I had never heard of this author before, but I will definitely check out other books that she's written because I really like this one and I ended up giving it 5 stars. So I highly recommend Director's Cut. And last but not least, I read Not in Love, Ali Hazelwood's newest book this month. And let me say from the top, I was a little bit disappointed. I know. I actually haven't heard a lot of people's reviews of it yet. I'd been kind of avoiding them and waiting until after I had finished this to hear what other people thought. And so I don't know how my review will match up to theirs. But in my opinion, it was not my favorite. It was very spicy, dare I say, her spiciest book so far, and I did enjoy that. However, I did not feel connected to the characters. It wasn't that I straight up didn't like them, but they were just not my favorite. I didn't get this like endearing feeling that I feel like all of her previous STEM romances give you. I just wasn't into it. I don't feel like I will think about these characters. I don't feel like I will really think about this book that much. I think about Adam and Olive from The Love Hypothesis all the time. Think about it all the time. I think about Levi and Bee from Love on the Brain. I think about Jack and Elsie from Love Theoretically. Am I gonna think about Rue and Eli? Probably not, because I didn't really feel connected to them, and that made me sad. I also felt like the plot was lacking a little bit. I do feel like there's normally a bigger picture plot that's going on that has to do with the science world, and like this one had that, but it just didn't hit as hard. It wasn't as interesting to me as the plots in all the other STEM romances, so I'm not really sure what that was about. I did end up giving this book 3 stars because I feel like it just kind of wasn't for me. It doesn't mean that it's bad necessarily, it just wasn't my cup of tea. This book is about Rue. She meets Eli on a hookup app essentially, and then the next day she goes into work and his company is essentially trying to like financially acquire the company that she works for, but they're drawn to each other, but he's kind of the bad guy in her mind because she's like, oh my god, am I gonna lose my job because of this guy? And I feel like I'm letting my friends down and my boss, who is also her friend, by like being with him or seeing him at all. So there's a lot of like internal conflict that she goes through. But yeah, I honestly just didn't find it that interesting. I don't know what else to say about it, but that's my review of it. I do want to do a video soon where I rank all of Ali Hazelwood's books. I think that would be really fun because at this point I've read all of her books that she's published. So I think that that could be an interesting video. Let me know in the comments what you think about that idea. But yeah, those are all of the books that I finished in July. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, you can give it a like. If you like me and my channel, you can subscribe. Leave a comment down below. Tell me what was your favorite book that you read in July. I want to know. Maybe I'll read it and talk about it in my next monthly wrap up. All of my social media links are in the description. You can go follow me anywhere on the internet that you please, and I will see you next week. Bye!